this is a Kairos moment in time, right? God is breaking through in the affairs of humanity in a really powerful way. And while a lot of people are upset about all the upheaval, I'm actually not. I actually think that God's trying to reorient some stuff. And to be able to do that, things have to be shaken up a little bit. And I think we're being shaken to our core at the moment. When we think about racial justice, or we're thinking about environmental justice, or we're thinking about gender justice, or LGBTQ justice, I think things are being shaken up. And so how do we extend the invitation at the moment to invite more of God in with us to wrestle with this and to discover what are we being called to in this moment? So we are in a Kairos moment, and I think it's an exciting time. The notion of justice can't just be about rhetoric. Actually, just this last week, I preached at the General Synod of the United Church of Christ gathering in Cleveland. At their biggest worship service, 5,000 people there. And the UCC is one of those denominations that talks a lot about justice. But I've said if all we do is talk about justice and don't do justice, we haven't done very much. And so I think it's important for us to get beyond the rhetoric. It's great to preach great sermons on Sunday morning that talks about justice, but actually putting your bodies on the line becomes a very different thing. And one piece I think that's really critical is that we've got to begin to teach folk how to do justice ministry. In much the same way that we teach people how to do pastoral care, how we do counseling, how we do administration, I think we need to make sure that folk are taking courses on that, and not just folk either in the UTI or in the metro urban, but everybody needs to understand how to do that. I also think there's a way to help people understand that our stories and our narratives are different, but they are still human stories, and that we need to see each other as human beings and recognize the dignity in the person that we're talking to or dealing with, because we're all, like I said, created in the image and likeness of God. And so we want to be able to celebrate that and lift that up. I think the other thing that becomes important, especially for mainline white denominations like the ELCA and seminaries of that, is how are they addressing their own complicity in racial oppression, in dealing with their own privilege and white supremacy within their own systems, right? Let's be honest, the Western theology that we mostly refer back to comes out of Europe, white male. So we're dealing with white male patriarchy in addition to white, supremacy that comes along with that. So how are we re-examining our own theology and finding the ways it's complicit with the ways that empowers people to think that somehow or another people who look different than them are somehow trying to take their country or their nation from them? So I think there's some real hard work that has to happen with that. I think I remember when I was at the seminary, we did diversity training. We had to go through that piece. But how as an institution are we examining our inner operations, our administration, our theology, our tenure process? How are we examining all this stuff and asking the question, is this supporting privilege, white privilege, and white supremacy? And if it is, then how do we dismantle that and find a way to be much more inclusive of all people? And that also includes meaning, what does it mean to be a Lutheran seminary in a denomination that doesn't have many people of color, but that actually welcomes all people here, both on staff and in the student population, and on not just the faculty, but even just the regular staff that's there? How do we welcome everybody to find a place here and to be able to say, if you love Jesus, you're at home here at Lutheran Seminary? So my prayer would be that. I would hope, though, that in my role as executive director of Power, that the seminary would find a way to engage more deeply, maybe even sending interns, having people that are on the ground working with us, either through the Masters of Art in Public Leadership, or even the UTI students or the metro urban students that are spending some time with us, learning how to do faith-based justice work on the ground on a daily basis. So those are some of the things that I think about when we address the issue of Charleston. When I found out about Charleston, Mark Tyler, the Reverend Dr. Mark Tyler, pastor of Mother Bethel AME, who's also on the UTI advisory board, is a friend of mine and a wonderful power leader, called him on the phone and said, what do we need? It just so happened at the same time, the Power in the PICO network had 50 religious leaders from around the country meeting in Philadelphia to have a second conversation about a moral economy. We stopped our program that evening, all went to Mother Bethel Church. And the chant began in that meeting, "We are AME." What would it mean for all of us to claim as Christians, brothers and sisters, that we are AME as well as Lutheran and UCC and Episcopalian and Presbyterian and Baptist and Kojic and whatever other denominations that we can think of to name? What would it mean for us to begin to own and say that we are all one and the same together in this journey? So I thought that was a very powerful moment and important in our collective journey together. What are the issues that the people in our congregation are ashamed of that they're not talking about, that we need to expose, talk about, make normal, and then welcome people into that space? So, our congregation has gotten to a place where we're welcoming all kinds of folk. So we're open and affirming. So half of our congregation is LGBTQ. It's both Black and Latino and African immigrants that have come here, and African American. It is, like I said, rich and poor. It's a little bit of everything. But what we're ultimately trying to do is get people to a place of liberation. We want them to be able to be free, to be who God called them to be. And we're working with that through the Spirit. We're working through that with supporting mental health. We're working through that trying to address food and physical needs. We're also beginning to work very clearly on also trying to deal with financial needs, because we understand in this country, at least, you got to have your money right to be able to live right. And so helping people figure out how to deal with their debt and get out of debt and do all these things, we're trying to help address that. How do we become the whole persons that God desires for us to be? I think that it was instilled in me in a very early age, this notion of justice. But the notion for me of Christianity was never devoid of justice. It wasn't just about preaching. It wasn't about communion or baptism or, doing weddings. It was about changing the world. And, it was about changing the damn world, not just changing the world, because so many people feel like they live in hell on a daily basis. And so we were working very diligently to address those concerns. And so I got into understanding faith from this perspective. And so for a lot of years, I did pastoral ministry, and I still do that, and I love it dearly. But it was never totally fulfilling, because there was this justice piece that was really longing to be able to make a difference, to be able to help transform the world. And so, a few years ago, almost 5 years ago, when Power was starting in Philadelphia and they were trying to find somebody to help work with it, I said, look, I'll do it and, get it off the ground. And then I wound up becoming the first executive director. So, I was actually meeting with one of my UCC mentors today and, shared with her that I was very clear that I am where God wants me to be right now. And I'm doing the ministry that I've always been meant to do. And this is a natural part of who I am. It's both faith, it's both justice, it's both leadership, and trying to help change the world, help change the damn world, as I like to say. I'm just starting in Philadelphia.